If you're old enough to remember when phones had cords and the only thing that went viral was a cold, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Big 6-0 with Kaylee Harris and Guy Rawlinson. Because who better to discuss life's second act than two people who still think mature is a type of cheese?
Welcome back to the Big 6-0, the podcast where we prove that growing up in the 70s and 80s was basically a combination of freedom, questionable safety standards, and somehow surviving it all. And today's episode is called Things That Were Completely Normal in the 70s and 80s That Would Shock Kids Today. And joining me, as always, is my partner in nostalgia, a woman who grew up in the golden era of backyard adventure, dodgy sun-tanning etiquette, and a single phone that probably stretched halfway down the hallway on a curly cord. Kaylee Harris, how are you?
G'day, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How did you manage to survive the 70s and 80s? Probably some of the 90s too.
How did we? And when you think about the way that we lived and even our parents as well, you know, how they parented us back in the 70s and 80s, and just extraordinary, isn't it, when you think that with the helicopter parenting generation, and I'm one of those, let's go back to the things that we did as kids that would shock kids today.
Well, if you were like me, and I'm pretty sure you were, whether it was after school, whether it was during school holidays, where mum, dad, whoever would say, go outside and play. And that was about the only rule that you had. You had to get out there, whether you got on your bike, whether you went down to a mate's place. And unlike today where, you had to check in every so often, you went out until it was virtually dark, or you thought, oh, I need to run home now because the streetlights are on, sort of thing. The things we got up to that we didn't want anyone else to know, horribly spurious, let alone probably very dangerous. Yeah, scary stuff, wasn't it? Really, you had a free hand on what happened for the next X number of hours.
Yeah, off you go on your bike with no helmet, or I'd go over to Jeffrey's next door, and because he was into Matchbox cars, and we used to sit in the dirt in the back and make little towns out of with dirt and mud, and drive our Matchbox cars through all these roads, and we did that for hours. That would keep us occupied for hours.
Wow, there's that's pretty dangerous sort of stuff, playing Matchbox cars in the dirt, and that's edgy estate stuff.
I know, I could have caught anything.
How many parents today, if Johnny or Mary, sort of get a face full of dirt or whatever, immediately comes out, we need to get you to the hospital because who knows what you've ingested, whereas, that was just part and part of what we
kids
did.
These days, a lot of kids aren't allowed to go outside without shoes on.
Yep. Well, how about drinking out of the garden hose, though?
Oh, but we all did. We all took turns at drinking out of the garden hose, and I think because it meant we could stay outside and keep playing without having to stop what we were doing, go inside and get an actual glass. So we'd just have the hose and we'd pass it round to everybody in the group and have a swig of water that tasted like rubber.
Instead of mum giving you the water bottle, the $120 water bottle, make sure you have a drink. Yeah, if you got thirsty, around to Kaylee's house, turn on the hose, and yeah, you're right. Your six mates would all drink out of the same garden hose, and you came home pretty normal, apart from the occasional twitch, I guess. But but that was life, and there wasn't too many repercussions as far as your health was concerned that I remember.
Yeah, and our parents managed to survive not knowing where we were a lot of the time, even like moving forward to the 80s and when we were going out with our friends and they had no idea where we were, couldn't see where we were, didn't know who we were with. None of this Find My Friends app where you can see where your kid is and who's with them and all that sort of stuff. How did our parents sleep at night?
Was the world any more dangerous today?
I'm sure it was just as dangerous.
I think the things that were sort of befell us, because we're a lot more trusting as kids, but I think we're all out together doing those sort of things. But even our parents, and it's one thing to say, that they used the knowledge they had to bring us up, but things like riding in the back of cars without seatbelts.
Mhm.
Because seatbelts weren't LAW then. And even, if you had a station wagon, I remember my grandfather had a Ford station wagon, and there'd be 5 or 6 of us in the back. If we were going on a picnic somewhere, it would be great. You'd be rolling in the back with your cousins or your brothers or your sisters, and, you go around the corners. And how funny was that you'd,
Slam
knock
into the
someone
person next to you.
That's right.
Or
And
if
if
you
you had
got
a baby, you had them on mum's lap
on
in the
your
front
lap,
seat.
yeah. Or if you
Yeah.
got car sick, you got to sit in the front between mum and dad on the bench seat.
That's
No
right. I
seatbelts.
forgot
How
about
did
that.
we survive those trips to Queensland and were family holidays?
Oh my gosh, I'd forgotten
Oh,
about it. If you got a little bit car sick, you just sat at the front with mum and dad. Oh, good one, good
yeah,
one. But
yeah.
bikes everywhere, no helmets. Whether it was climbing trees, and catching cicadas. We used to catch cicadas, which meant you actually did have to climb a tree to catch those brown bakers, green grocers, all those sort of cicadas. You don't see kids catching cicadas today, probably because cicadas have worked out kids aren't allowed to sort of get up that high these days.
Yeah, well, I also think that kids these days, thanks to us, are more frightened of insects and lizards and bugs than perhaps we were. If a kid, I don't know about your kids or grandkids, but if my kids see a spider, it's like absolutely I'm going to die. It's the worst thing
Yeah,
ever. Like, it's just a
yeah,
spider, or it's
yeah,
just a
yeah.
blue-tongued lizard. It's not going to hurt you, but they seem more fearful of everything these days
Yeah. Did
than
you
we
have
were.
boundaries as far as the neighbourhood was concerned? Like you knew you couldn't go a certain
No,
distance away? No?
no, I'd go probably 1 or 2, maybe 3 suburbs away if I had enough time. I'd go from,
Suburbs?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I'd ride to the next suburb, or yeah, usually 1 or 2 suburbs away for the day, just on your bike. Away you go.
Did you ever end up somewhere you definitely shouldn't have been?
No,
No?
no. What about you?
Um, I was definitely places where I was told I probably shouldn't go, but that was maybe a bit later in life, I guess, as a late teen, where
Like
if we went
Oxford
into the
Street?
city, where we go into the city, we were always told that where the cinema district was, which is down near that
Yeah.
Chinatown end of Sydney, don't go up to the Rocks because it's way too rough up the Rocks end, and it's completely different these days. You go up to the Rocks, very gentrified, but I remember that we would go up to that Rocks end of the city, and because we were told you shouldn't,
Hmm.
you sort of
You
did.
did. Yeah. Well, we
Um,
were told to stay away from King's Cross, which we did, because it was the cross in the 80s was very different,
yeah,
as we
yeah.
know from many documentaries and stuff. But yeah, I didn't go up there.
The PR Guy helps businesses tell their story clearly and credibly. From PR to podcast production and marketing, it's communication without the spin. Visit theprguy.com.au.
Yeah, but talking about being kids, I'll just hark back to being probably it must have been in the late 70s. There was still smoking in staff rooms, in offices, all those sort of things. Now there, I remember we had a teacher who routinely would walk around with his pipe
Yes.
at school.
Yeah.
You try and explain that to anyone today and say, well, yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair
well, we
game.
had ashtrays on our desks at work in the 80s, and we had our cigarettes there, our Winnie Blues or whatever, and the whole workplace was full of smoke, and it was just what happened, and no one complained about it, and the people who didn't smoke didn't say anything. It was just what everyone did. And also, when you talk about the workplace, I was thinking about the things that were said to us as girls in the 80s by other people, men at work, was just totally unacceptable on a lot of levels, on all levels, actually. And those things that happened, I'd hate to think that they would happen to my daughter now in the workplace. But I can remember, as you know, worked in a radio station, being felt up by a very well-known Australian entertainer. And apparently so are a lot of other people. But you didn't say anything. You couldn't do anything about it. And I can remember being in the same workplace, I can remember being pushed up against a wall by a guy in the office who then proceeded to try and kiss me.
No.
And I was just like, dude, get off me. No, I'm not, and at the time I just walked away. I didn't think anything of it. But when I think about it now, I go, oh my God.
What part of that is right anyway? It doesn't matter what era it is. What any part of that is
is okay. So
I remember getting at a place I worked in the early 80s. There was a memo that went around, but it went around to all the women, and it was during the height of summer, and women were not allowed to wear slacks or pants in the office because, I remember the inverted commas, or abbreviated sunsuit, which basically meant a short skirt in the boss's eyes. You actually had to wear it was almost something out of Leave It to Beaver. It had to be that very, 50s mother sort of look as far as, and this was something that was in the early 80s from the CEO as a dress code for women in the office. And I thought, even then, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's frightening, isn't it, when you think about it? I mean, I know sexual harassment still happens in the workplace today. It's still, and I don't think we'll ever get rid of it. It'll always be around in some form or another. But thank goodness we've moved on from those sorts of incidents back in the 80s.
We talk about and I'll hark back again to school days, but even the punishments that used to be dealt out at school, and at the corporal punishments, getting the cane. I mean, detention is one thing, and I remember getting detention. I think I was in year 5, and we had to stand against a brick wall. It was the middle of summer, and I think it was for the 45 minutes we had lunchtime. We had to stand there, brick wall, height of summer, and that was it. Like, I'm thinking, just that in itself, let alone the cane, which was still quite prevalent in high school. Can you imagine what would be the repercussions with parents coming up to schools now saying, you made young Kaylee stand in the sun for 3 quarters of an hour?
And there was no such thing as a school hat. You just stood out in the sun.
None of this no hat,
did you
no
ever
play.
get the cane?
No. In a version, but not from the headmaster.
Okay, this is like something kinky you got up to in the 90s, or?
Well, you know what the story is. No, it was a case of I think I was in year 8 or something like that, and there was a much older teacher who's probably younger than we are now, and she was convinced I'd said something in the classroom, and it was a kid behind me or just whatever, and she came up and she got the ruler, which had a metal edge along the side, and she told me to put my hand down on the desk. Mm-hmm. And then proceeded to make an example of me by continuing to hit the back of my hand with that ruler with the metal edge until my hand was bleeding. Like just multiple sort of wounds across the back of the hand. And, of course, I wasn't going to dob the kid in behind me because you didn't want to be seen as a dobber. All hell sort of cut loose when I got home, and Mum said, how did you get that? And I had to say, well, such and such did this. Well, up we went to the head. Well, that's justifiable. Dad probably thought I deserved it, even if I didn't say what I said. But just the concept of getting the cane from the principal, and, for whatever, 6 across the hand, 6 the best, or on the back of the leg. Can you imagine that?
Oh, I know. Or having the blackboard duster thrown at you, that happened quite a lot. I was talking to Simone Fletcher in class one day, and the old Italian teacher that we had came up and grabbed me by the hair and her by the hair and banged our heads together so hard that she actually took a chunk of Simone's hair out. And Simone's father was up at the school the next day. And I thought, can you imagine that happening? But you were talking before about dobbing. That's another thing that you were considered a dobber if you told on any of your other kids for anything that they had done. Whereas even that's all changed now, and I think that's for the better, that kids are encouraged to call out bad behaviour and to call out bullying. And that's such a great thing now. I think the whole idea of dobbing being a negative, it's actually not. It's actually, if you're being somehow victimised, or someone who is and you don't say anything, that's a positive that's changed for our kids.
Oh, yeah, sure. I don't know whether there would have been too many positives from teacher rapping you across the knuckles till it bled because someone may have said something. I don't know whether I would have got too much of a positive or that kid. It could have been your mate Jeff. I don't know.
Could have been.
But positives too is the awareness of sun sense today. I know you mentioned you're standing next to a brick wall and in the sun because you're on detention, but you would have been one of those chicks that would have just lathered yourself in reef oil or baby oil and just put yourself on a towel at the beach somewhere, would you? Or not?
I think I did it once and I got so badly burned I never did it again because I haven't got that kind of skin that can do that. I just go red and then go back to white. So I think I tried to do it to be with the cool kids, but you're effectively putting reef oil on your skin and going out in the sun. You're cooking your skin.
But how many times did we see? You just see, kid after kid after kid, invariably girls. Boys would be tough and never admit to the fact that they got so sunburnt it actually hurt. But you would see it, wouldn't you? Like the bottles of Johnson baby oil or the reef tanning with no, SPF in it whatsoever. And
nothing,
just
no.
baking.
Yeah.
Just
no
baking.
Such thing as sunscreen till the old slip, slop, slap thing came in. Just out you go and you just do your best.
Yeah, I mean, we're more aware of it, but surely after you've got sunburnt that badly, you'd have to think, well, is this a good thing?
Mm.
But as a kid, I remember my grandmother used to put olive oil and vinegar on me if I'd got sunburnt down at the beach as like a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. You'd smell like fish and chips for the next day or so. But the olive oil was supposed to take out supposed to moisturise your skin, and the vinegar was supposed to take the sting out of it. Now, why you sort of got that sort of much sunburn on you in the first place, I don't know. But the home remedy was probably almost as bad as the sting.
Yeah, well, there's a whole other podcast in home remedies. We'll do that at another time.
I know, but it's one of those things, isn't it? They equip themselves with the information, and kids today probably would even be as acutely as aware as anyone that if it's starting to get a little bit hot, then you probably need to do something. Whereas we just kept playing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And going back to school for a second, we're talking about lunch boxes and how some kids didn't even have lunch to bring to school for whatever reason. Their parents didn't make them lunch or couldn't afford to give them lunch money. So they just came to school, would ask other kids for food. And there was no such thing as being anaphylactic aware. We just, whatever you chucked in or whatever your parents chucked in there, you ate. And I was never asked what I wanted. It was like, whatever mum put in there, we had to eat it. It was a Vegemite sandwich, whatever. Whereas these days, kids get offered things to go into their lunchbox. Like, what would you like? Do you want ham? Do you want cheese? Do you want blah, blah?
Mm-hmm.
We were never asked.
Yeah, and they're a little bit gourmet too. You might have your Greek feta that might be sitting in a little
can you imagine?
all this sort of thing. And I'm thinking, yeah, you'd get the tomato sandwich, and by the time lunchtime came around, you could have wrung it out and used it as a chamois and just
Right.
You
might have an apple, and not cut up. You'd have a whole apple or mandarin and a sandwich, and that was it.
Yep. Hey, did you have we all just had one phone at home, didn't we?
Yeah, well, yes, yeah, one phone, and it wasn't cordless. This is before cordless. It was on a cord.
Yeah.
No answering machine, so you didn't know who was ringing you. You had to answer it to find out.
They're things that, like, if you were to say today to anyone, "Oh, here, go and answer the phone," and you'd have to get up and probably walk to the other end of the house, not knowing who was ringing, and then Kaylee, it's for you. And then Kaylee would have to traipse up the other end of the house and answer the phone. And if it was a boyfriend or a girlfriend, those private conversations, not so much.
No such thing as call screening or...
And did you ever get... Oh, no, look, I used to go around to a friend's house, and if he played up, it was always from his mum, "Wait till your father gets home."
Yeah.
There was that threat.
Yes, yeah. It's a lot of pressure for dads, isn't it?
A lot of... Or that stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. There's a generation of us that know what that means, but can you imagine, community services or whatever would be onto you like a flash if there was any evidence that sort of language was being thrown around.
That going on, yeah, exactly right. Exactly
Yeah.
right. And what about things like we didn't have streaming services or anything like that, so kids could, we had 4 channels. We had the 3 commercials and ABC, and that was it. And you'd look forward every week to a particular episode of whatever your favorite TV show was, and if you missed it, it's gone. There's no replaying it. There's no, you'd and then the next day you'd go to school and talk to your friends about, oh, what about the episode last night? Can't wait for next week. There was none of this being able to have on-demand content whenever you want it. It was just whenever the TV networks decided to serve it up to us.
Yep. I remember we actually only had 3 channels. Dad did not believe that the ABC was a real television
Really?
option. So we'd have 7, 10 and 9 here in Sydney, and that was our view. And you're right, you'd go up and you'd go to school and say, oh, did you see Happy Days yesterday? Or, did you see Saturday night or Sunday night at the movies? You'd wait all week for that movie to come on, and then Dad would blow you out of the water because he'd say, oh, look, I want to watch, It's a Knockout. And they'd have, and once again, there's a situation where let's have something on television where people get physically harmed, and it's pretty funny, and TV execs will think, yeah, that's good. We'll go with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? And there was only ever like one TV in the house, and you all crowded around it. There wasn't more than one, and none of this TV in your bedroom stuff. That was only what super rich people did. But yeah, if you and the same with movies, if you're waiting for a movie to come out at the cinema and it would come, and if you missed that 6-week window when it was screening, you missed it. Then you'd have to wait 12 months for the video to come out. So you could go and buy the video or the DVD. None of this on-demand stuff now. You can watch whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want.
Another thing, again, is if you want to go and watch a movie, okay, you don't have to go to the cinema. But, yeah, you did have to go to the video store to get your beta, or your VHS tape, and that's another thing altogether. But just the fact that you had to wait all week for your favourite TV show, did that teach us patience? And sort of what? I don't know. I don't know. And we couldn't binge watch, Ponch and whatever he was from Chips or whatever.
Yeah,
we couldn't binge watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine saying that. I often wonder, I had the situation years ago where the nieces and nephews in our world were all in the same room. Okay, they were all at our place in a room, and there were probably 5 or 6 of them, and they were all sort of laying across each other's legs. They were probably, I don't know, 12, 13, I can't remember how old they were. And they were all on their phones. And we thought, what's going on? They're very quiet. They were all texting each other while they were laying there in the same room, sending each other messages. I thought, aren't you all in the same room together here? I mean, it's incomprehensible that we actually made friends because we didn't have that ability to have multiple sources of communication at the same time. If I'm ringing Kaylee, or I knock on Kaylee's door, hi, can you come out and play today?
Yeah.
Can
all
you
that
imagine
awkwardness that came with that kids these days don't have to worry about because they can send a text.
Yeah.
Even now, my daughter will message me from her bedroom in the morning, hi, Mum, what's for breakfast? Because I'm in the kitchen. I'm like, I'm literally 10 feet from you.
Yeah.
And
imagine writing someone like a pen pal. I remember we got given pen pals when we were in year 4, and it was some address in New Zealand or America or whatever. I don't know where teachers or these people got these names from. They could have been.
It could have been any, like serial killer.
Some penitentiary somewhere where they're getting, letters. But we blindly just wrote to people, and letters would sometimes come back. Tell people today that you just blindly write to someone at a random address where I don't know where they got it from, and you're going to get a letter back to an address, which leads me to your phone book and saying to people, yeah, you worry about internet security and this and that. Well, if I wanted to find where someone lived, I'd go to the white pages and go flick, flick, flick.
Oh, look it up.
There's their phone number. There's their address.
Yeah.
Bingo.
So true, isn't it?
Security issue? I don't think so.
No.
As for people
Oh,
just showing up on your doorstep unannounced, that's another. There was a lot going on, wasn't there?
I know, and even just calling your friends' parents Mr. and Mrs. That was a thing. These days kids don't do that. It's everyone's first names, which is not. I'm not against that. It's not a bad thing. But it's they would never call their parents friends Mr. and Mrs.
No, I was of that generation as you are, and it wasn't until I was probably in my 30s I actually waited until the man across the road from where my folks live invited me to call him Ken.
Yeah,
But up until that time,
yeah.
it was Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah, it's a lovely sign of respect, isn't it? And I think that there's something nice about that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Were you allowed? I can't remember. Were you walked to school?
To primary school, yes. High school was a
Yeah.
bit far away. We used to catch a bus, but
Yeah.
we would walk to school. In primary school for sure.
Yeah. There was a couple of kids in our year and it would have been easy, probably a 2, 3, 4 kilometre walk. They were a long way away, but they would walk to school.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know how many kids do that or just go in the SUV and get dropped off early. And with some members of the family who are teachers who will say kids will be waiting at the front of the school before the gates actually open because mum and dad have dropped them off to go to work. But they need to be dropped off because that's safe. And yet they're waiting at the front of the gates, which aren't open.
yeah.
I'm
And
not sure which is safer.
whole kiss and drop idea. So the kids are safely handed over to the school. But we would just mosey on, take our time getting to school and walking. And I can remember when I was in high school here in Sydney, and I remember I would have been 15, I think, and there was a bloke a guy who was like 17, and he liked me. He met me through some of my friends.
Wasn't
He
a
showed
pen
up-
pal, was it?
Oh God. I think he wished. And I came down to catch the bus from school, got on the bus, and he was parked in his little green Mini there, and he followed the bus home. And I was sitting like 3 seats from the back because I wasn't cool enough to be in the back seat. And I kept looking out the back window, and he was following the bus, waiting for me to get off. And I remember when I finally came to my stop, I didn't feel confident enough to say something to the bus driver because he would have just said, "Get off my bus, I've got somewhere to be." There was another girl from my school who was older who got off. And I said, "Can I walk with you because I'm scared?" And she said, "What are you scared of?" I said, "That guy's following me."
Oh.
And she walked me halfway home. And then she went to her house and she goes, "Well, this is my house. You're going to just walk by yourself from here." And luckily, nothing happened. And I guess the similar things could happen these days. That's not unique to our generation. But the fact that I think kids are a lot more aware now of that sort of thing, that it's not okay, and that they could turn to an adult and say, "I'm frightened." Whereas I didn't feel I could do that. I felt I'd be laughed at. And frightening.
Yeah, it is frightening. And this will sound flippant, and I know we've got places to be very shortly, but do you remember sex education when you were a kid? And it was like there'd be films about ducks or chooks, and I remember there was a church hall with all the kids, and it was all very hush hush and like it was all very funny and whatever, and you'd learn about sex education. I'm sure it's got a different name. I'm sure it's called something that's very
I didn't get sex ed until high school.
Right.
I definitely didn't get it. Well, not that I remember in primary, but in high school, going to an all-girls school, we got the talk.
Well, being an
I think in
all-girls
year
school
8.
too, there was been a lot of talk, not just probably that was organised and structured.
Yeah.
But I remember in the end of primary school, we had a sex education thing, and it was after hours. Like you had to go along with your parents, who were probably horribly embarrassed by it all. But it was pictures of chickens and ducks, and like we came out more confused than we probably went in, not knowing why we were there and why there were pictures of.
Well, they probably couldn't show you pictures of vaginas and penises, could they?
Yeah, it sort
That
of
wouldn't be
defeated the
appropriate
purpose,
either.
though. No, you're right, but all very inappropriate.
I was just going to say, I don't know that's changed that much. When I went to school with my kids for sex ed, and they were up the front sitting on the mat, giggling and laughing behind their hands, and all the parents were up the back, and we were doing the same thing. We were all laughing as well. So I don't know that sex education has changed that much between us and our kids.
The only thing that hasn't changed, I think, and I was watching Play School with one of my grandkids not so long ago, and that covert sort of double entendre sort of meanings that go along with Big Ted and Jemima and everything, that hasn't changed for years. But if you could drop, say, a 12 or a 15-year-old from, today back into the 70s, what do you think would shock them the most?
The most? Probably the freedom that we had as kids, and also the shock of not having a digital device in their hand. What do you mean I can't? There'd be no phone, and the fact that your parents didn't know where you were most of the time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Anyway, hey, guess what?
What, we're out of time?
Well, I've got to be home before the street lights come on, so time to go. I'll catch up with you another day.
All right, cheers.
All right, see you later. Bye.
The views and opinions expressed on the Big 6-0 are personal and reflect those of the hosts and guests. They do not represent the views or positions of any affiliated organisations or companies. This podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for guidance on any personal matters.
Oh, and before we go, let's give credit where credit is due. Kaylee Harris and I came up with all the genius content for this week's episode. Our producer, Nick Abood, well, he keeps the lights on and makes sure we don't accidentally upload a cat video instead of a podcast. So thanks for keeping us on track, Nick. Nick?